Hey everybody. So this biofuel thing, there's a lot of parts to it. So I'm just now beginning to learn some of the intricacies about it. This is some information I thought I should share with you guys. So this is from a website called Natur.com. Okay, cool. Digging deeper. A decade ago, a transition to better biofuels seemed imminent. A new generation of commercial scale biorefineries was coming online in the United States, Brazil, and Europe. They were designed to make ethanol from fibrous cellulose rich feedstocks such as agricultural leftovers, grasses, or fast growing trees that generally thrive on marginal farmlands and require less intensive cultivation than corn or soybeans. By now, these cellulosic biofuels made from sustainable feedstocks were supposed to be gushing into the fuels market, trimming transport emissions, the fastest growing source of CO2 worldwide. Trimming transport emissions, which is the fastest growing source of CO2 worldwide. Alas, the flow of cellulosic fuel is barely a trickle. Processing equipment proved hard to operate, petrol prices fell, and governments eased mandates designed to force the pricier cellulosic fuels into the market. Ultimately, all of those facilities struggled. Most are either producing at very low levels today or not producing at all, says John Field, who studied the climate mitigation potential of bioenergy systems at Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Tennessee. What didn't stop were the generous incentive pushing food based biofuels and their shortcomings. Europe's Renewable Energy Directive drove logging and slash burning of tropical rainforest in Brazil, Indonesia, and elsewhere to make way for soya bean and oil palm plantations, displacing indigenous communities and wildlife and releasing the rainforest's massive carbon stocks. And the carbon does not only come from the trees, even more can be released from soil as it heats up and dries. Indeed, soil holds roughly 3/4 of the organic carbon in the Earth's atmosphere. In the Earth's biosphere. Excuse me. Newer programs that tie biofuel incentives to the carbon intensity, such as California's low carbon fuel standard, still fail to prevent unintended consequences that come from a change in land use, says Ben Lilliston, Director of Rural Strategies and Climate Change at the Institute for Agricultural and Trade Policy in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Demand for feedstocks can release carbon that is stored in forests and farm soils in ways that regulators struggle to factor in for. So, demand for feedstock can release carbon that is stored in forests and farm soils in ways that regulators struggle to deal with. So, that's pretty much the problem with all these fast food companies and all this beef and this meat that we're eating is you got to feed the animals, and what we feed them, how we feed them, it has to have certain lands, which is what this is. And so they tear down these forests to build land specifically for one purpose, to feed these cows, which is specifically for one purpose, to make a couple purposes, but it's mainly to make big corporations money and to make us sick. And in doing so, we're releasing more CO2 into the atmosphere. We're perpetuating a toxic system, and we're cutting down the rainforest, which is creating genocide to species, animals, trees, and just a general havoc in the area. So, but again, it goes back to that money game, man, and lack of regulation, which ties into the money game too, and power. All right. For instance, in the past 5 years or so, U.S. biorefineries have brought a growing share of U.S. soybean harvests. This can indirectly bump up carbon release because soybean produces elsewhere scale up to meet USA soy demands. Resulting carbon debt might never be repaid. According to a 2020 study, once land use impacts are taken into consideration,